Today we're looking into an old trick for optimizing samples that is from the 90s. Yeah, I'm that old. I started making music with sampling and synthesizers and beatbox in the 90s, and one thing that we had at that time was a limited amount of RAM, that's for sure. The 90s were not the 2000 and up for the sampling. Memory, it was limited. I owned a Ensoniq Mirage sampler, and I owned a S330 Roland sampler. The Mirage was 8 bits, if I'm not mistaken, and the Roland was 16, if I remember well, but the amount of RAM was so limited that you always had to be creative in the way you're going to select parts, and you had these features like looping a section because you wanted to have sustain, but you don't have enough memory to put the sustain of the synth that you're sampling. And every time you wanted to save some space, well, you had to be creative. And one of the way that we could be saving space, I'll explain today. Actually, I got to remember that way of working because, of course, as the years went on, we had more and more RAM, and it wasn't an issue anymore to limit in this way quality of the samples. The fact that we have more RAM today makes us a little bit lazy about optimizing our samples. Not a lot of people do optimize the sample or do it well. So what I did, I came back to this notion because I have the Drumlogue from Korg, which has a limited amount of RAM. For a lot, it might be one of the pain of this device. In my case, of course, having more, I'd be happy, but 24 megabyte is a lot if you know how to optimize it. Let's talk about how to optimize this. We're just going to do a quick remember how sampling works. Sampling works with two main parameters: the number of bits, which is basically the description of the loudness of the signal, and the number of samples per second. So every second, let's say you run at 44K, or 44,100 samples per second, it will take 44,100 snapshots of the sound per second. So that's how sampling works. And by playing them at the same speed after, you hear the evolution of the sample or the sound that you're recording. And each of the samples, even the snapshots, they have a quality of number of bits. So 8, 12, 16, today 24 and 32 bits. And these represent the amount of dynamics from the noise floor to the maximum volume. So of course, an 8-bit sampler is more grungy and noisy because the noise floor is so close to the loudness of the volume. And anytime you have a sound that goes soft and louder in an 8-bit system, you might go into the noise floor and come back. So it might be really just grungy the way the sound dies out, or the reverb on the snare, it might just go. It's actually pretty cool today, but at the time when you wanted to recreate real things, it was electronic sounding. And today we like it because it sounds vintage digital, but at the time was like, it doesn't sound real. Anyway, another topic for another video. So how can we save space today with these notions? Well, the trick is to actually convert your sample from 44 or 48 to something twice as small or 4 times as small without the system thinking that you actually downgraded the signal. Let me explain. Just talk about the importation of samples. And a lot of systems import, but they do convert when you import the sample into them. Real hardware samplers, in my view, and in my days, in the 90s, they would be able to run samples from different sampling rate. You could have a sample at 44, 22, 11 sample rate per second, and you would play them one side by side, and it would be able to play these different sampling rate without any problem. Now, some devices today converts it into its own main system, let's say 44 all the time. So it means that even a sample that is lower quality will be upgraded to that quality of sound to be able to run with the others. So it's not a problem. You just need to understand this. It means that in the Drumlogue, to be able to, let's explain how you import into the Drumlogue, to be able to load anything into this sampling-wise, or even other things you can load in, you need to press on the record button as you turn on the device. It will load into the USB mass storage mode, which is basically, it becomes a USB disk. And it appears in your computer, and this is what I have here. And I'm going to record my screen so you can see what I'm doing. No name, you double click on this one, and then you have the no name, you have sample. And sample is all the samples I have inside this device. I have these samples that I started to work with, like this one here. Well, first of all, this device will not be able to play the whole thing, but it gives you an idea of this. I want to use this long sample to look at the space that it takes. Now, this one takes 2.3 megabytes. If I open it up, the sample editor, the digital audio editor I'm using is Ocean Audio. It's free, and I'm on Mac, but there's going to be something on PC that does the same thing, that's pretty sure. If you have any suggestions for Windows users, put the link below, and we'll share the link to a good free sample editor. So this one, I've got the sample here. The first thing I do, I already done it before the video. I did go into view here, actually effect, and I normalized it. Now normalize, what it does, it takes the loudest volume in your sample and say, this is, I don't know, 12 dBs under the maximum. I'm going to boost everything 12 dB. So it will not distort, but it will take the maximum amount of bits. When we talk about number of bits, we talk about loudness. It brings in that, so when you play it in your sampler, it doesn't go into the noise floor. Again, not big of a problem today, but this was huge in the 90s, where if your sample was soft, it would go into noise floor of the machine. So it's just a way of, I'm working always like that. I'm always normalizing. So then you've got the gain, you've got the volume that you can play with. So this is max volume before distortion. This is what it does. Now this, what I do, the logic is to say, I want to change the sampling rate. So convert sample type. I'm going to change that. Right now it's at 44.1. So okay, instead of 44.1, I want this to be at 2250. Half the speed. I'm going to go, okay. Half the speed. Now listen to this. It's not a big of a difference. There's actually one. I'm going to save it. Save it as, it's going to be 22. This one's going to be called 22. Okay. I'm going to save this into my optimize folder. Save this. And then I'll do it again. I'm going to go edit. And I'm going to go convert sampling rate. And this will be at 1125. Okay, 1125. Now, we're losing some of the high frequencies. Now, you need headphones for this because it's very the high end. Again, go back to your sampling notion. If I'm using a sampling rate of 11, the highest frequency rates that it can record is after the speed of the frequency rate is the highest frequency that you can record in the sound. So you take 11 divided by 2, 5,500. That's the highest frequency that will be in the content of that sound. Okay, that's the logic. And it cuts everything else over. So it starts to be more muffled. I'm going to save that also. Save as. Not copy. Well, copy doesn't really matter. Copy as, and this is going to be 11. Okay. Now let's say we try another one. I'm going to say this one. Say, can I go sampling rate again and go, okay. I'm going to save that. Save as. Okay, so I've got all of them now. So I've got this one, original one, now this one, almost the same, starts to lose the frequencies, and so if you're trying to do this with a bass or with a kick and a snare and a hi-hat, you might lose some of the hi-hat and some of the reverb if you have reverb, but for most of it, it might be okay, and the difference will not be noticeable. So that's interesting to keep in mind. Now, the problem is that if I save this and I drop it into the mass storage mode of the USB mode of the Drumlogue, if I drop them here and I boot up, I will not save any space. Now, let me explain how this works. Is that the Drumlogue, like many devices, when you drop your file in it, the first time it loads them, it will convert it into its own format. By doing so, it will convert them back into 32 bits, 44.1 kilohertz. So what it just did will be, well, I will have the quality of the sound that I had, but it will be converted to them about the same space that the original had, even actually bigger, because when I go from, and I can show you this one here is the original. Here, this one. Look at this space, 3.3 megabytes, and this one is 2.3 megabytes, because my original one is 16 bits, and the one inside the memory of the Drumlogue is 32 bits. So it takes more space by taking my 16 bits and convert it into its own internal. It took 1 meg more. So again, it's just getting bloated for nothing. So what I do for the other ones is the problem is if I just drop them in there and I load it, it's going to convert all of them into 48, 32 bits. So they'll be back to the same size or bigger than I want them to be. So what I'll do, I'll cheat the internal system to say, they're already at 44. Do not make them convert the sampling rate. Because right now they've got, in this case, 11 samples, 11,000 samples per second. And I want to keep that. So I'm going to say, okay, this one, sampling rate, the playback, I want it to be 44.1. Okay. And I'm going to save this. So now this one, if I play it, it's too fast. Not a problem. We will change the speed inside the sampler. So do the same thing here. I'm going to edit, and I'm going to say adjust sampling rate. So it's not changing anything in the sample. It's just saying my original key is there. The speed of playback should be 44.1. Okay, save. Same thing with the 6K. I'm going to go here. Sampling rate, 44.1. Okay, save. Close this. Now, it hasn't changed the speed of any of them. The memory space. See, this one is 2.3 megabytes. Then the 22, half of it, is actually less than half of it because it's 772 kilobytes. Then it went to 11K. It's 387. And then the 6K is 212. So it went from 2.3 and more than half, and even half and half and half. So I'll take all of them. I will rename them 26, 27, 28. So I've got my 22, 11, and 6K. This is the naming scheme that the system wants. I'm just going to take them and drop them here. I'll wait a little bit. It's done. It's inside the machine. So now I'm going to boot back the Drumlogue and press play. Then it will update user format. Now it's going to load the system, the normal system, factory data. After, we're going to get the user data. Now this takes more time. The first time around it loads new samples because it converts them into its own internal format. So this takes more time. We'll wait for that. Start up. Okay, so I'm going to go select. I'm going to take a program at the end. This one. So this is the original one. This is the full, original. If I take the other one here, just beside it, I'm going to go here. I'm going to say, well, I'm going to take the user, set 26. See, it's faster because now it thinks that the sampling rate is wrong, but then we just have to go into his internal, actually here for tuning part, actually shift in this one. I'll tune it minus 12. Original. not a big difference. Not to say I don't hear a difference. And take this one, and we're going to do the same logic. We'll try the 27th. 6, 7. Now this is too fast. I'm going to go into tuning here. I'm going to tune it -24. Okay. Now let's try the other one. This one. Go here. I'm going to go mini pop. I'm going to change it to user, and we said 28 if I'm not mistaken. 28. This one. Now this one's really high pitched. Now this will stay too high pitched because I can only detune 2 octaves down here and not more. So I would be able to play it lower if I use an external keyboard that plays lower in pitch on the keys. So it would work, but from the internal, value tweaking, it wouldn't be possible. So, but let's just go back to original 22, 11. Okay. So for me, the difference in sound when it plays back into the unit is almost inexistent. There's almost no difference. It probably is when you listen very closely, but inside a mix, depending on what you did put in, it's really not obvious that there is a difference here. So let's actually go back, see how much space after the conversion we actually used right now. So I'm going to turn it back off, press on my record, load it back on into the record mode, which is basically the USB mass storage mode. When it's done, it will appear and we'll compare the space. So if we compare my original 125, this one, it's 2.3. Now this one is 3.3 because it updated from 16 to 32. So that's what we knew it would be doing. My 22 was 772 kilobyte. My 22 is 1.7 megabyte. Still, from this one to this one, it's half the space. So it's better, and it's smaller than my original. And the quality-wise, hearing-wise, we didn't hear something that it was different. Now, the 11K is 387. Actually, that's the end of computer. After conversion, it's 888.33. So it's bigger, but still now the size is a lot smaller than this, and it's still smaller than the original. So this becomes something that it sounds almost the same, and honestly, I didn't hear a difference. And we have something now that can take a lot less space and still have the sound that I'm looking for. And the other one, the 6K, went from 209 to 454. But it was kind of too low that I needed, actually too high that I needed to go lower. But so I might not use the 6K. I might use the 11K all the time, as long as I don't hear a difference. And this makes me happy because I'm using a lot less memory. That's how it works. This is how you basically have the speed of sample rate, but you play it back normally, so it's now faster than it should be pitch-wise. And when you put it back into the machine, it goes, oh, it's 44.1. Okay, just play it lower in the pitch on the keys and you'll have the same sound. What happens is that sometimes you lose the high end. It might not be a problem, it might be one, but also what happens is sometimes it changes the texture because you're losing some of the frequency. So it might be also a way to create new sounds. So I hope this actually opened up a couple of ideas of how you can optimize your sound for less memory space if that's your issue with the device you have. But it's also a good thing to think about optimizing your sound so you take less space. And then especially when you move memories, sample memories from one device to the other, or if you have a backup somewhere, having a small backup with only the sound you need. That's it. If any question about how to do this or problems you might have doing this, put them below. If you have tips on a good other free editor that permits you to do this, put the link below and we'll share that with everybody. Stay safe, make more music, and see you soon. Cheers.